I'd like to welcome everybody to the Thursday, May 27th, Walnut Creek Planning Commission. This meeting is by teleconference only. Commission Secretary, will you call the roll, please?
Thank you, Chair Kraselic. Commissioner Lezak.
Here.
Commissioner Pickett.
Here.
Commissioner Strongman.
Here.
Commissioner Anderson.
Here.
Commissioner Ward.
Here.
Vice Chair Reiser.
Here.
And Chair Kraselic.
Here.
We have a full complement of commissioners. We may conduct business. Thank you.
Thank you. As stated earlier, this is a meeting by teleconference only. This meeting is being held in accordance with the Brown Act as currently in effect under the State Emergency Services Act, the Governor's Emergency Declaration related to COVID-19, and the Governor's Executive Order N-2920 issued on March 17, 2020, that allows attendance by members of the Commission, city staff, and the public to participate and conduct the meeting by teleconference. Teleconference locations are not open to the public. To provide a live remote public comment, join the Zoom teleconference meeting. The meeting ID this evening is 932-7620-6027, and the passcode is 851023. When the chair opens the public comment period, you can use the raised hand feature or press *9, which will alert staff and the commissioners that you have a public comment you would like to provide. Please wait your turn, and once brought into the meeting, state your name, the city of residence for the record. You'll have 3 minutes to make your comments. With that, we will move on to the first item of business, which is the consent calendar. This evening on the consent calendar, we have the approval of 3 meeting minutes. Is there any comments, questions? Does any commissioner wish to pull any item from the consent calendar or make a motion?
Move to approve the Planning Commission meeting minutes of December 17th, February 11th, and March 25th.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Commission Secretary, will you take the roll, please?
Chair Kraselic. Commissioner Lezak.
Aye.
Chair Ward.
Yes.
Commissioner Pickett.
Yes.
Chair Kraselic.
Yes.
Commissioner Strongman.
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson.
Yes.
And Vice Chair Reiser.
Yes.
The ayes have it, 7-0, passes unanimous.
Thank you. The next item is public communication. This is the portion of the meeting that is reserved for comments on items not on the agenda. Under the Brown Act, the Commission cannot act on items raised during public communications, but may respond briefly to statements made or questions posed, request clarification, or refer the item to staff. Is there any member of the public who wishes to provide public communication at this time? If so, please use the raised hand feature or press *9 if you would like to provide a public comment. Commission Secretary, at this time, are there any members of the public who wish to speak?
It does not appear that anyone has raised their hand on the attendee list to speak at this time. Does not appear anyone's here to speak yet.
Thank you. We have received a request tonight to move item 5A, the presentation by the Youth Commission to the committee. We've been asked to move that up in the agenda. If there are no objections from any of the commissioners, we will move that to the next item of business. Are there any objections to this move? Seeing none, Commission Secretary, we will move on to item 5A this evening, the presentation from the Youth Commission.
Hi there. Okay, I see Michelle now. So can I go ahead and screen share now?
Yes,
Yes.
please go right ahead.
Here we go.
Hello, everybody. Good evening. We are very excited to be here with you today. We are members of the Walnut Creek Youth Leadership Commission. My name is Michelle Alas. I'll pass it off to Dina.
My name's Dina Mirmotal Lepisohi.
My name's Rebecca Joseph.
And we are excited to present our proposal on adding a youth seat on every commission of the city. So go ahead, Dina.
Yeah, so I'm going to go over a quick overview of what we'll be talking about today. So first, we'll discuss background info and municipal code changes. Second, we'll talk about why we believe there should be youth seats on the commission. And third, we'll go through the statistics of our youth survey that we use to gauge interest. And lastly, we'll talk about our future steps. So to start off, background information and municipal code changes. We decided to take on this project and this policy because we wanted to enact something that will leave a legacy in Walnut Creek for years to come to assist youth. It involves youth more in local government and allows them to find an avenue towards more opportunities in their city government. The Youth Leadership Commission has thus far not done a project like this, and we wanted to correctly advocate for the youth in Walnut Creek by doing this. So here's some more background information on why we kind of came up with this. We noticed that the Pleasanton Youth Commission had done the same thing. We met with one of the youth commissioners, their leads, and city staff liaison back in December, and they talked about how in February of 2013, they had gotten approval for a non-voting youth member on 4 city commissions: Human Services, Parks and Rec, Civic Arts, and Library. Basically, so far, all that they've heard is how it was beneficial, and they're working to make it a voting member now, which shows how well it did in Pleasanton. And what they did was they amended the Pleasanton Municipal Code to add the non-voting youth member. So I'm going to hand it off to Michelle to kind of discuss what we're requesting be added to the Municipal Code.
Alrighty, so these are the changes that we've made to city municipal code. What we did is that we went through this language and then we edited in blue the different stipulations and provisions that we would amend in order for there to be a youth seat on every commission. So these are just some general provisions for membership. Really the key one, there are a couple key things here. The first one is that in order to select what the youth who is going to be on each commission, the Youth Leadership Commission will review the submitted applications and provide a recommendation to council, who will then appoint the youth member. Then furthermore, this youth member will have preferential voting rights, meaning this is an expression of preference for every vote cast before all the other non-student board commissioners, and this does not go into the final numerical outcome of the vote. It is simply a symbolic vote that the youth member casts. And then also here we have removal from office. The city council may vote to remove maybe one inept youth member, however, not remove the position in its entirety. Then we have some qualifications here. First, we edited there that, of course, if a youth member is under the age of 18, there's no way that they can be registered voters. And we put that a youth member can only serve up to 2 years. And the criteria for being on a commission will not be the same, obviously, as an adults commissioner, which is expertise in the area and education in the area, but rather a passion and desire to engage in the community in whatever manner the commission that they have selected serves the community, and to want to learn more about that subject matter and want to really improve our city through tangible policy change. In the case that a youth member, that there's no youth that applies, there's no young person that applies to the commission seat, it can be left vacant for the duration of that term or be filled by a member of the Youth Leadership Commission. So you kind of have that flexibility there, that there is nothing that stipulates that there has to be a youth member, but this is only in the absence of youth member applications. And so you can see here the membership, it will be comprised of 5 members and then 1 youth member. And we want to say that the minimum age is to be at least a high school freshman at the time of appointment. Alrighty, pass it off to Rebecca, I believe. Or Adina.
So we're kind of going to talk about why should we have a youth on the commissions. And so first off, it's about a desire to learn about the inner workings of city government. Especially in this day and time, we see so many youth who are interested in taking part in their local government, but don't know what path to take and don't know how to do that. This will allow for them to get opportunities to explore careers and prepare for one that they're interested in, as well as diversity in perspective. This is an important theme that we as youth commissioners bring about because as youth commissioners, we have the ability to talk about parts of our city that the adults cannot see. And having that perspective on commissions is really important, as well as it'll allow for the youth that are on those commissions to share it with their friends and encourage their friends to go to council meetings and give in more to their commissions that hold meetings and allow for public comments. So yeah, I'm going to hand it off to Rebecca now, who's going to talk about the statistics we received from the youth survey.
Thank you, Michelle and Dina, for covering the background information in the ordinance. As Dina said, I will now be going into the survey we conducted as well as our next steps. So in the beginning of April, the policy task force sent out a survey to many of the local high schools within Walnut Creek to gain more perspective from the youth. Dina, could we go to the next slide, please? Okay, so as you guys can see in this slide, the data that we received further reinforced why we as a commission took on this municipal change. And as you can see, a majority of the youth want to be more involved in the Walnut Creek community. And furthermore, 81.8% of all people surveyed would potentially be interested in serving on a commission. By opening up a preferential voting seat on the commission, it allows an additional avenue for youth to be heard and also to learn and further their interest in the intersection of government and something that they are passionate about, such as planning and city development. In our next slide, we see some data we gathered from the same survey asking students if they would consider themselves knowledgeable or experienced in any of the commissions. As you can see specifically, the Planning Commission, we can see that there's a 27.3% of our youth expressed that they felt experienced enough to apply as a student member. So in addition to the abundance of youth who are more than ready to get involved in our government, a majority of them are also extremely passionate about topics the commission discuss. And furthermore, if you still feel concerned about the lack of knowledge or understanding a high school student may have, the commissions will be involved with the selection process. In addition, we will be having a one-term trial period to ensure that the quality of these commission meetings are not diminished. In addition to collecting data, we also had the youth fill out what this advancement in the municipal code meant to them. And here we can see Isabel Sturges and Hadil Hanari express the joy they felt when they heard that this change might happen. Isabel says, youth do not always get many opportunities to extend their knowledge on a subcategory of local government that they are passionate about. And Hosty continues, I think youth bring a perspective to the commissions of Walnut Creek that may otherwise not always be taken into consideration. If I were to be given an opportunity to do something I'm passionate about in my local government, I would dedicate myself to it fully. As you can see, the youth crave a seat at our democratic table and they want to pursue their passions. By implementing these seats, we can further our democratic ideals of allowing everyone at the table. And now, before we wrap up, I will be talking about our next step. First, we will be meeting with all the commissions as we're doing right now, and then we should wrap up on June 7th with the Parks and Rec Commission. Next, in the month of June, we will work with the city attorney to crystallize our ordinance. And then before the city council goes to recess, we will present our finalized ordinance. And if all goes well, we will enact the trial period in September.
Right, so are there any questions?
Commissioner Pickett.
Yeah, a couple of questions, a couple of comments. On the part of the presentation where you talked about the city of Pleasanton, I didn't notice the Planning Commission on the list of commissions that Pleasanton has done this with, was that just not included, or did they not provide for this on the Planning Commission?
I can answer this. I believe at the point of our discussion, they were talking about how they, I think they briefly mentioned the Planning Commission, as they did have some difficulties at first, but were able to work with them and are still in the process of working with them to get a youth member on their Planning Commission.
Okay, so they struggled with that and haven't, they're kind of trying to resolve it right now. Is that correct?
I'd actually like to go back on what I said, because there's a few commissions we met with. I don't believe Pleasanton has a planning commission. I'm sorry, I was thinking about another commission that we were kind of talking about how they wanted to enact this, but weren't able to. But we did meet with Pleasanton, and they mentioned that they did not have a planning commission. I apologize for that mistake.
Okay.
A little nervous.
That's okay. If you were serving as the preferential vote on the Planning Commission, you probably would get over that nervousness. So where did you get the idea of this preferential vote, where you kind of get to say a vote, but it doesn't? And I appreciate the fact that it doesn't count, but that you get to express your opinion. Where'd you get the idea? Who coined the idea of preferential vote? I've never actually crossed that terminology before.
That's a great question, and I can go ahead and answer that. So a preferential vote is something that I've taken from Assembly Bill 261, which essentially states that in California, school districts with one or more high schools, there can serve a student member on the district governing board of education. And what it says in AB 261 is that that student has a preferential vote. So before every single vote, they cast an expression of preference, and they pretty much set the tone for the entire vote. They can be pretty powerful, even if at the end it doesn't count for the numerical outcome of the vote. And I am a student board member on the Mount Diablo Unified School District. And so I myself cast a preferential vote at every one of our meetings. So that's where that term comes from.
Great, thank you. And just a couple of comments. I'd like to compliment you on your presentation of whys. I think you captured the reasons why your proposal is something that should be given serious consideration. And as the senior member of the Planning Commission, and I think I earned that title both by my age and years on the Planning Commission, I think old people can learn from young people. Even though people look at it the other way around and they say, go to an older guy and learn something. I've been on a lot of committees and in a lot of different capacities, and I am blessed by what I hear from young people. And it's encouraging to me that we have an opportunity. I mean, you are almost, my grandkids are just a little bit younger than you. So that's a couple generations we're spanning there, and I can see some real value in creating a more harmonious society if we span generations and share ideas across generations. So I think there's some real merit to what you're proposing. Obviously there's a lot of things that need to be thought through, but I can see that your group has thought through it well. And so I just appreciate that, and good luck to you as you go through the process and learn more about government. That's all I had to say.
Commissioner Ward, did you have some questions or comments? I thought I had seen you raise your hand.
I did. Yeah. So first of all, thank you for your presentation. It was very clear and compelling, and I really appreciate that. And I too am interested in the idea of it being kind of an advisory or preferential vote. I think that's great. I noted that you said that the city of Pleasanton is considering having it be a voting member of these commissions, and I wonder how they were on that in that process, and whether that was a serious consideration that they're considering, or what's going on with that.
Right. So I can actually take this one. When we met with the Pleasanton Youth Commission, as I mentioned back in December, they were discussing how they had a conversation with their somewhat library commission. And another one of their commissions mentioned that they felt, well, the senior members felt a little bit upset to see that there were youth members that had good things to say and were contributing to the conversation as much as everyone else, but didn't get to vote. Of course, this was after years of a trial period and this being enacted that they began to consider this. So now they're kind of in the process of talking to the commissions and once again, gauging interest, seeing how people feel about it.
Great. All right. Thank you for that. I appreciate that. I am concerned though, because a lot of this is like being on the planning commission is a significant time commitment. I mean, this is our third meeting in 2 weeks that we've had, and we usually meet twice a month. And the meetings are there's a lot. We get voluminous staff reports and all kinds of other things that go along with that. And very few people ever comment on most of our items or even attend our meetings. And certainly we don't see a lot of young people coming for most of the things we do. And I just wondered, I know you did a survey of kind of general interest, but do you really think there are enough people who would be interested in participating in this more intense way on the commission?
Yeah, I definitely do think that a lot more people will come. Obviously, from the survey, we saw that there are, I think, 27% of people were interested in applying for this position. But also that now that there's an avenue for them to express their interests with planning and city development and actually put that to use, and having that be available to them will spark interest. Because obviously previously, everything was in person, and getting to these meetings would be quite difficult as a high school student. But now that they're on Zoom over this year, people are more getting involved with the government, as we see in the commission meetings and in the city council meetings. And now with this avenue available to them, they'll be able to express and apply to the fullest. And speaking to your time commitment sector, I do believe that every one of us are very busy people, but the people who apply for this specific position will make this a priority because they're so passionate about it. For me, Michelle and Dina, we have bi-weekly meetings. They run from 6:30 to almost 8:30 every week. And then on top of that, our policy task force. The Youth Commission truly does take a lot of time to commit to, but because the three of us are so passionate about it, we make time to make those meetings and to move around our schedules to prioritize the Youth Commission. And I truly believe that the people who we ask to fill out the survey, and even the people who apply, will understand that this is an important role, and because they like talking about the city of development, will take the role seriously and come to the meetings.
Great.
I'd like to add on to Rebecca. She said it perfectly, Commissioner Ward, but also kind of a story about how I became a youth commissioner is I kind of figured out through social media that this was an opportunity I could take. I wasn't very much introduced to my local government. Although I was very passionate about it, I didn't know how I could get involved. And once I realized that I really wanted to do it and I applied, I dedicated my time fully to it. And I'm happy to say that it introduced me to a voice that I never knew I had and allowed me to find other opportunities as well.
Great. Well, thank you so much. And thank you for the thoughtfulness and the research and the information that you provided. I think that any one of you would certainly be an asset to our commission. And I hope that we can move this forward. Thank you.
Commissioner Lezak.
Thank you for your presentation. I've been very impressed with the work that you ladies and your predecessors have done over the last few years that we've interacted with you, and especially when we were in person in some of those meetings. My question is, have any of you participated in the Citizens Institute? And so seeing that you are not acknowledging that you have, let me tell you why. A number of years ago, when I expressed an interest talking to some city council folks about participating in the community and what could I do and and with my professional background of 20-something years in planning, that I thought that there were some things that I might be able to participate and add value in. The first thing that these folks asked me is whether I had participated in the Citizens Institute. Walnut Creek has a fantastic program that I encourage all of you and everyone who's watching this who has an interest in our community to participate in. It's like the training program of how not just government is run, but how the city of Walnut Creek's government is run. And I was basically told, do not consider being a commissioner if you haven't done this. Like, this is, you need this as background. This is like, you have to go through middle school to get to high school. And I was blown away, like, oh my God, I have so much experience. Why would you tell me that? And then I went and participated in the Citizens Institute, and I will tell you, it is 150% worth it. It is a great experience, and it completely sets you up for all of the things that you can do as a volunteer in Walnut Creek. And frankly, they recruit heavily from that group for all the positions, despite, irrespective of which commission it might be. So, to everyone watching this, to you ladies and your group, please look into that and see if that's an opportunity for you, because I think that's a huge thing. I think Commissioner Pickett mentioned appropriately that we can all benefit from having multi-generational interaction. But I will tell you that I'm a little concerned. Some of the commissions have very specific technical knowledge background requirements. It's not so much planning. Planning is that way for sure. But I am always blown away by the Design Review Commission. You can't be on the Design Review Commission unless you are a licensed architect, landscape architect, or other designer. I don't know that you're technically be allowed to be on that commission. So there's a number of things that, folks need to work out as part of this process. I'm not suggesting anyway I'm not supportive, but I'm just letting you know that there are concerns and reasons why the city is very careful about selecting the highest quality folks. And I totally appreciate that on every one of these meetings, despite my experience and background, I learn a lot from my colleagues. And I would look forward to having you be there, but I just caution you that this is, this is serious stuff. I will also mention the city of Pleasanton absolutely has a planning commission. And so, if the youth commission isn't participating in their planning commission, there may be a reason. And if they're not aware that there's a planning commission, that's a problem. But I understand this is all good stuff. And in no way do I want to discourage you. But I really do come back to my initial point, and I encourage you all to participate in the Citizens Institute. Thank you.
Thanks, Peter. Commissioner Strongman.
Right. Thank you.
I generally like the idea. I think it's a great idea, but I do have a couple concerns and questions. First of all, will the applicant or the finalist actually have to take Brown Act training like we all have taken?
So we can stipulate, we can even, make amendments to what we've changed already in the municipal code. I'm really following, when we were working on it and going through the language, I was kind of following a similar governmental body of a school governing board where the student board member doesn't count in the Brown Act, and technically. So if that's if that's the case here and that's the change that we need to make, I would say no if they don't need to. But it's obviously something that's recommended to follow Brown Act practices. But if we make that change, in that similar government structure, the youth member it does not count in the Brown Act. So that's definitely recommended. So,
okay, thank you. Next concern I have, you mentioned that, for example, Michelle, you were on the Mount Diablo Unified School District Board. Is that correct? As a student member?
Right.
That I would have a problem that you would also be on one of our commissions at the same time, because those of us on these commissions cannot serve on multiple functions across the board usually. Brian, our city attorney, might answer that better for me, but I believe that's true, that you can't be on the Pleasanton Planning Commission and our Planning Commission at the same time. That is one concern I have. The other is recruiting of high school students. Not all of the high school students in Walnut Creek attend Walnut Creek schools. We have quite a few at College Park, Ignatia Valley, De La Salle, Carondelet, and possibly other schools around here. So what are you going to do to reach out to them as potential members of these commissions?
So I can, if you want to answer the first
for it.
Michelle, you're welcome
I
to.
was gonna answer the first one. Yeah. So I myself wouldn't be the one serving on any of these commissions. I'm graduating this year and going off to college, but that would be, obviously that is a choice that the individual who is applying to the Planning Commission would have to make. I would not make the choice to be on both the school board and the Planning Commission. That is just so many hours of Zoom meetings and going to City Hall and whatnot. So obviously that is something that would have to be made clear to these obviously very ambitious individuals if they want to take on two government bodies, two government entities. So yeah, Rebecca, if you want to take on the second question.
Yeah, and as for reaching various students, it would go in the same way that we conducted this survey and how we get youth commissioners to apply, or youth to apply for the youth commission. As for this survey, we reached out to all the schools within Walnut Creek, and we made sure that all the people who filled out that survey lived in Walnut Creek, as well as we pushed it out on the Youth Commission Instagram. And as Dina expressed earlier, Instagram, especially now with COVID and all of us at home, social media has played a big role in outreach and reaching students across Walnut Creek. So really utilizing social media and the schools to push out this information while also verifying to make sure that these students indeed do live in Walnut Creek. Because as you said, Councilmember Strongman, that people from Walnut Creek go to De La Salle, but not all De La Salle students go to or live in Walnut Creek.
Mm-hmm. True.
And I wanted to add on that we did get many, actually, if not a great amount of students who filled out our survey from Northgate, and we verified that they lived in Walnut Creek. So we pushed it out to schools outside of Walnut Creek as well to make sure that we were reaching the right students.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Anderson, did you have any questions or comments?
I did. I think it's a great idea. We can learn from each other, and certainly high school students would bring a different perspective than any of us have currently or can even remember, perhaps. But I'm impressed that we've heard from high school students who can quote assembly bills and discuss the changes they've made to the municipal code, and I've served on school boards. So, there's some talent out there, as well as some interest and passion. I like the idea of the preferential voting. The Supreme Court, the Chief Justice always speaks last at the conferences. It's always the junior member who goes first. And there's a reason for that. They don't want the most senior person to, intimidate or influence everybody in one direction. And if the first person to speak is someone with an entirely different perspective, that's, I think, only a positive. I can see, where there could be some concern if, a new member thinks, for example, as a new adult member might think that they have to speak on every issue at length, and that time is taken up and so forth. But I think, if there's a 1 year kind of trial period with different commissions, then, we'll see if that sort of thing is an issue, just kind of, practical administrative issues come up. But I think it's absolutely worth a try. There's a lot of brilliant and engaged high school students all around this area. It'd be good for them and be good for us.
Commissioner Reiser, any comments or questions?
No further questions. I caught Commissioner Anderson's hint, so I will leave it at that. I want to commend the Youth Council for the presentation. I'm completely in support. except for the devils in the details, as has been kind of vetted out here on this. So appreciate you guys showing up, and I think it's a great idea. Thank you.
Thanks. I have one question. You mentioned that the council could remove the member if for some reason, but that they couldn't eliminate the position if they desired. Could you expand on the reasoning for that a little bit?
The reasoning for adding that the position can't be removed in its entirety is because we don't see why maybe one student who maybe didn't serve to the best of their abilities, or was maybe an inept commissioner is the reason for eliminating the position entirely and removing that voice entirely from the table. So we just want to prevent one youth who maybe speaks out on something in a way that isn't seen as conventional or orthodox, and then we don't want that to endanger the entire position in its entirety. So kind of also giving safety to the student who is on the commission to say, hey, like even if you aren't as competent as maybe a previous student commissioner, that won't endanger the entire position.
Okay, thank you. I think it's a great program. I support everything that you've presented and moving forward with this. My only real concern, I think, would be just the time commitment for this planning commission. Usually it's at least a couple hours every meeting. Sometimes we've gone till midnight or later. And that would be my only concern, is just to make sure that whoever volunteers and gets selected just understands the commitment that it could require. All right, thank you. Commissioner Hickey, is there anything you would like to say, or did I just
Chair Krasalik, I was just going to address your question from the standpoint of, most of the commissions, or all the commissions in the municipal code, do have provisions where we set forth the number of commissioners, and all commissioners serve at the pleasure of the city council. And so we wouldn't be able to bind future councils in sort of making a permanent seat. The council always has the opportunity to reconstitute a commission, to change the number of members on a commission. But that said, a commissioner leaving does not usually result in the chair going away either. It may remain vacant for a while, and then a new commissioner joins, and the youth representative position could be framed the same way. So, but I wanted to clarify that question a little bit.
Great, thank you. Okay, Dina, did you have any last minute questions of us or comments, or are we good for the evening?
I think we're good, but we just wanted to thank you so much for having us. It's been a very nice evening, and your comments are going to be discussed among us, and we really appreciate the feedback. We look forward to talking to you all more in the future, and hopefully creating a new connection between the Planning Commission and the Youth Commission as we go by. Thank you.
Thanks to all of you, and good luck with your pursuit here. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we will now move on to item 4, public hearings. This evening we have 2 public hearings before us. And if I can get my notes squared away, the first public hearing this evening will be on the 10-year CIP program, I believe.
I may interrupt just before Mr. Thompson begins. Just want to remind the chair and the commission that if there are any ex parte communications for any of the items on tonight's hearing or any hearing in the future, just a reminder to clarify those for the record. I doubt there is one for this item necessarily, but perhaps for others there may be. I just wanted to raise that point. Thank you.
Thank you. So this would be the time if there were any ex parte communication. Okay, seeing none, we will move to the presentation from Mr. Thompson.
All right. Good evening, Planning Commission. See if I can share my screen with all of you and start this slideshow. See how that works. I can't tell whether I'm sharing it correctly or not. So
You have your sidebar on. If you can go to presentation mode, there we go. Thank
there we
you.
go. Okay. All right. Good evening, Chair Kruselic, Planning Commission and members of the public. I'm Carlton Thompson, Senior Civil Engineer over the Capital Program. And thank you for the opportunity to present the draft 2022 to 2031 Capital Improvement Plan. I want to make sure up front I thank our capital project engineers, maintenance teams, and our arts and rec managers for their hard work and input over this past few months. Steve Waymeyer, Rich Payne, Mike Vickers, Jake Allred, Jeff Jolivet, Alex Wong, Mike Hawthorne, Sandra Naughton, and Scott Dennison, and others have been critical in the development of this plan. Tonight, I'll quickly go over the CIP and the capital budget development process before we dive into each of the cycles, with the capital budget being first. As we progress through this presentation, I'll highlight a couple of projects in each 2-year cycle. The presentation will stay at a high level with the goal of giving you a sense of the level of detail that each project gets. The goal here tonight is to receive your concurrence that the CIP conforms to and supports the current general plan. If you have any questions about a particular project, please let me know and I'll do my best to answer it. Many of the projects may also conform to the general plan in more than one way. Staff has not done an exhaustive delineation of conformance, and what we've selected is what we think is the most relevant. So this slide illustrates the various inputs that go into the development of the 10-year CIP. The CIP pulls from a variety of stakeholders, including the Transportation Commission, PROS Commission, and our asset management systems. It includes resources like the TIF project list, asset management MMPs, pavement reports. We are updating this CIP in conjunction with the development of the capital budget. So what does that mean? The 10-year CIP informs the capital budget. Typically, the first cycle of the CIP is the proposed capital budget. And then the 10-year CIP is that long-term 10-year planning tool prioritizing programs and projects over 5 2-year cycles. Let's see, I don't know if I got everything all in that one. And in this capital budget, we're going to, the capital budget appropriates funds, the CIP does not. This capital budget that's going to happen, that starts will start in July, is a return to a normal 2-year budget cycle from the last budget, which is a 1-year budget cycle. Okay, so where are we at in this process? What's involved? First, we identify available funding with the finance division. Then we identify potential asset management projects from the MMP and our walkthroughs of our facilities. We go through every one of them with the user groups and the maintenance staff. We hear from Transportation Commission, so we've been there twice. PROS Commission, been there twice. Finance Committee in April. And the City Council, we were there May 4th to present this and the projects to the City Council. So what this slide doesn't tell you is how in-depth our stakeholder engagement process is and how involved our iterative processes of prioritizing can be. It bounces back and forth a lot between all of these meetings as we kind of iterate it down. A lot of staff work with input from all different staff levels and the community goes into the project development process. So what are the next steps? Well, tonight we're presenting to you the highlights of the CIP. Then we go back to City Council for approval and adoption of the first CIP cycle, which is the capital budget. And our intention is also to adopt the updated CIP along with that at City Council on June 15th, is what I'm being told is where we're at now. The CIP is important, not because it, well, let me make a step back. The CIP does not obligate any funding, but what it does do is it starts to paint the picture of what we're trying to plan for and where our gaps in funding are, so that when we go to our outside partners like CCTA, MTC, the Metropolitan Transportation Commission, FEMA, the Federal Highway Administration, Caltrans, and others, we can show them we have a plan for receiving grants that they may have available to them, and then other funding opportunities that come up. And there may be a couple here in the presentation that we'll highlight. But so that CIP is important, that you have this long range plan. Okay, so how big is this CIP? The 22 to 2031 CIP proposes to spend right now with available fund about $84 million, a little over that. This represents the city's investment in maintaining our infrastructure and modifying it to meet the needs of the community. This amount is not the total amount in the CIP. This is just represents the cumulative total of forecasted funds available to, and programmed to projects. The bulk of the CIP funds currently come from gas tax, as you can see in the bars right there. And the next largest contributor is the general fund. And as we kind of go left to right on the screen, maybe I'm not sure how if it flips around on you, but not. But general fund is first, with facility reserve on the end. And you can see how some of those numbers get smaller as we kind of climb up the stairs to 84 million. So here we're showing the demand for funding by cycle and project category. You can see that we are really consistent with asset management. That's with those blue bars on the left, and that the other categories demands vary when specific projects are forecast to need funding. For example, in FY 26-27, we've programmed a large investment in parks projects. And in 24-25, 28-29, and 30-31, there's demand for transportation projects. Just because there's demand, however, does not mean that they get funded. Some of the projects in the CIP have been sliding to the right, in other words, further down the road, waiting on funding. So for the 22-23 capital budget, we're returned to a 2-year budget. But we have to recognize we're coming out of the pandemic. Last year, we had a 1-year capital budget to adjust our internal processes, and then the pandemic struck, forcing us also to resize that capital budget. This budget's a return to the 2-year budget, but it's just a little bit smaller than past 2-year cycles. Some projects that were pushed to the right for the FY 2021 budget are included in this project, so we're picking those back up. But we still need to remain conservative with our revenue forecast for funds that are tax-based. Additionally, we continue to save for the large demand funding in parks in 26-27. So you would see, if you look back at how we actually programmed funding, if you looked back at the council agenda, where you looked at the Parks and Pros meeting pieces, you would see that we didn't spend. We're not planning to spend in the CIP all of the money from the In Lieu Parkland Fund. Here's where the money goes, and this is fairly typical. And notice that 3/4 of the spending is going towards maintaining our infrastructure, which meets a major council objective. I'll also note that some of the money from the sources that we get is also fenced. It's restricted to being able to be only spent on certain things. It just can't go wherever. So the first cycle of the CIP 22-23 is comparable to 18-20 capital budget. We got it's just a little bit less, about $2 million less. Roads projects also include projects for sidewalks, so ADA compliance. And the general fund is focused on facilities. 59% of the 1.9 million expected for general fund contribution to the capital budget. But that money also supports storm drain repairs, traffic signal repairs and maintenance, ADA transition plan projects. Those are the ramps that you see that we put in and repair around town, and then median work as well. So I'll highlight a couple of projects in each one of these and go kind of quick. And one of the things that I'll try to do for you is, as you see in your attachment, one for the staff report that we put together for this, I'll highlight what general plan goal these projects try to line up with. So proposed phase 1, Your Parks, Your Future, is an estimated $2 million. This is just to bring on a design and construction team start to have that conversation, get contracts in place for a larger project, construction project later down the road. And the earlier we bring those teams into the process, the better project we'll have at the end. This, we think, conforms to the natural environment public spaces of Chapter 3 and Goal 5 to maintain and enhance the park system, specifically Policy 5.2, regularly assess specific user groups' needs and abilities in their use of the parks in public spaces. And also in 22-23, we're going to start doing some plans for, this is an opportunity project. We have an opportunity to partner with 2 developers to make a section of Broadway between Ignacio and Civic better for families and workers. The current street is wide from sidewalk to sidewalk. If you've ever been over there, you know exactly what I mean. The proposed design will make it easier to cross as the distance for pedestrians between the curbs will be shorter. It also provides for bicycles, helping connect North Downtown to the core. This project will also allow staff and necessary consultants to create preliminary designs, work out requirements, and for adjacent development, because you haven't seen them yet. There's some projects that are probably coming forward, or maybe you've already seen some of these, and to help them work out their pieces as they take their project and interface it with the public right of way. We think this meets Chapter 5 for transportation and Goal 9 to provide a pedestrian-friendly downtown, and Policy 9.1, which is balance the needs of drivers with downtown pedestrian scale and existing proposed transit and bicycle access. So jumping into 24-25, we actually go to build this project, still with the same GP goal. This project is potentially partially funded by an Affordable Housing Sustainable Communities grant that's being applied for now with the developer and the city, and along with some potential other development coming in along that corridor would help build this. We think that this project, all told, is somewhere in the neighborhood of 7.2 million. Whether or not all of that would be funded, well, not all of it would be funded through the city. And there will be a council meeting coming up too that will talk a little bit about that grant application and how much, and this may actually move into the 22-23 capital budget. I'm waiting for the 15th meeting to see what that looks like. Again, Chapter 5, Goal 9. Also in 24-25, a thing that was a project that was a highlight for the Transportation Commission is the YVR corridor study. This project will help us prioritize projects along this corridor that are shown later in the CIP. This project was, as I said, a high interest item for the Transportation Commission. We feel this project has a wider impact than just the city over the long term, so we pushed the project into this cycle to allow us to explore funding opportunities with CCTA and Metropolitan Transportation Commission. We think it has a broader impact. As you all know, that when traffic backs up on YVR, it makes a difference in anybody's commute that lives on the other side of the hills to the east. And if you're coming from there, then it definitely makes your commute out to the 680 freeway and 24 also challenging. So this is Chapter 5, Goal 8, which is to serve as a model for other cities by providing comprehensive TDM program that strives to decrease the use of automobile, reduce peak period traffic congestion. But we also think that this is also going to help with a few other things. So Policy 8.1, provide, monitor, and continuously improve a coordinated set of convenient, efficient transportation alternatives for those who would otherwise drive alone, including employees and school children of driving age. There's a lot to be looked at down that corridor. And if you look in the CIP, you'll see that there are projects for improving bicycle access and things. This study out in front will help us really start to define and refine those things. In 26-27, we get to the point where we're ready to potentially go to construction on a very large project that the community's been talking about for quite a long time. This would be the construction phase of Your Parks, Your Future Phase 1. It's estimated that project would cost up to $42 million. And the funding method, because it's so large, it can't be funded from savings in any one of the funds. But we think this project meets the GP Chapter 3, Goal 5. as the previous design project does as well. In 26-27 also, we start to, this is just another example of some of the things that are in the CIP, which is just to replace stuff that we currently have. In the mid 2000s, we replaced some significant components to the traffic signal network to bring them up to technology standards. And as we get to 20 some years down the road from when they were first done, it's probably time to really do those again. So in the CIP, we've added a project that's similar in cost and size to what was done in the early 2000s to replace and upgrade some of those components to keep that traffic signal system smart. Is really the best way to say it. We think that also part of Chapter 5 transportation and Goal 3. And it's also just a part of our maintenance function. Okay, in 26-27, Locust Street streetscape is something that we have in the current capital budget to do a study. It's a small little amount of money to do that. But we also think that project at the construction level will be somewhere in the neighborhood of $5 million or more. And there's no identified funding source for that. But it would create a more pedestrian-friendly environment down the Locust Street corridor, which if you've been down there, you've seen all the outdoor dining and how well that's working. But there's a lot of demand for that right of way. And how do you do that? And how do you drain it? And how do you make sure the utilities have access? There are all these competing interests through there that we're starting to look at now. But at some point, we're going to go to construction on something. I've put it out in 26-27. It may slide to the right, may come forward, who knows? But we think that meets, again, Transportation 5. But this is Goal 9 and promote a pedestrian-friendly downtown. And Goal 10 also to promote safe bicycling through the downtown. There's a number of policies in those goals, but we think that this project is supported in those two areas in the general plan. In 28-29, project that I pulled out was this Newell Bridge widening at San Ramon Creek. This is over between Broadway Plaza and South Main Street. There's a restriction in there where bicyclists have to find their way into that outside lane in both directions, and some parking on one side. This proposed project provides connection to the West Downtown from the West Downtown to the Iron Horse Trail at Newell and South Broadway. There's a current capital project, as I said, to study the widening of this bridge that was approved in the 18-20 capital budget. This is again general plan chapter 5 goal 3, and in particular it's to look at maybe policy 3.3, promote maximum operational capacity and efficiency on arterial roads and collectors. But we're also looking at the modes here, right? So just because the cars have dominated in the past doesn't mean that's the way we should continue to look at things. This project that we're doing currently in the capital budget, but eventually will influence what widening is needed here, if any. And we think that a widening would be cost about $3 million to widen, mostly probably to widen the sidewalks. But we will see as we get further down the road. Out in 3031 is a project that's really a maintenance function, but I highlighted for council, I'll highlight for you, because not everything is maybe right down the line in the general plan, which is to replace our parking management system. Its estimated cost is about $1 million, funded through the downtown parking fund. So they've got some time to save for this, but we know that the parking garage systems need to be some major investment about every 10 years, because that's about how long it was between the last one. And one that may be of interest to a few people is a project that's a new class 1 bike path on Ignacio Valley Road from Viamonte to Bancroft. Really, because if you've been out to the Safeway project, you know that there's some class 1 facility already from Oak Grove to Viamonte. The facility would be located in an existing landscape area on the north side of the roadway, but there's some gaps there, and would not have a negative impact on vehicular traffic. But we'll see from that corridor study. And ultimately, the goal here is to result in safer travel for both cyclists and motorists. This project is aimed at completing that bike pathway network on the east side of the city, connecting the east side of the city really to the Iron Horse Trail here closer to downtown. We think this is conformance to Chapter 5, Transportation, Goal 5 and 6 to provide a safe and attractive environment for bicycle travel throughout the community in the walking environment and provide accessible to all, specifically policies 5.2, 6.1. And I think I've got to the end. So I gave you a brief highlight of the overall CIP, and I can go into detail on any specific project. I wanted to leave some time for questions. This concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Carlton. Very nice presentation. Appreciate that. Are there any questions from any of the commissioners? Commissioner Strongman.
My question is not quite on task. Basically is, if Congress ever gets their act together with an infrastructure bill, will some of that float down to us, and will some of our projects be accelerated if that happens?
It's a good question. We are paying attention to that. And I have a couple of shovel-ready projects ready if someone wants to give us some money. I don't really care who it is. And so the short answer is yes, we're ready for that. We do expect to get some funding. We've been working with the local legislators at the state and federal level to apply for some of these things and to get our projects kind of on the list. And so we've already been working in the background. They don't show up on the CIP right now, mostly because we're waiting to see what comes out of all of that. But I will tell you, I have shovel-ready projects for stuff already.
Any other commission questions? Commissioner Ward?
So one of my big concerns in looking over the report was regarding the Heather Farm Swim Center, of course, because that's just such a big thing. And I was concerned that it was kind of being shoved off to the side as a discretionary project, and I wasn't quite sure what that meant. And I think you described quite well that it's being broken into different parts that are going in different buckets. But I'm still wondering, why. I understand that you need some sort of preliminary planning in order to even get a kind of handle on what's really necessary to replace that. But it doesn't strike me as a optional or discretionary maintenance item or an asset of the community that can be just let degrade any further than it already has. And so I wondered if it's going to continue to just be in the side discretionary bucket, or are we going to reframe it in some way when there's more information, or what's going to go on with that?
Right. I'll try to tackle that in probably the best way I can, which is to say that Your Parks, Your Future has a program, and there's a committee for that, and they're working through that process to give the city additional guidance on how to handle that phase one project. Discretionary is more of a term used in the CIP for a project that is not explicitly maintenance related. So replacing a roof is a non-discretionary one. Fixing the windows or replacing the doors, or that maybe not be a painting, not necessarily. But when a building gets to the point that Clark is, to do the extra to get it up to what the community expects is well beyond maintenance. And so that's when it becomes a discretionary project. If you remember, the library was a very similar kind of thing. The little library that we used to have across from City Hall, everybody agreed was very, and it went through a whole process. There was a whole design process. And I will tell you that project was very similar in size to what's being proposed for Clark. Clark is a little bit larger. The swim center piece is larger than the library, but it's very similar. And so that it'll go through a similar process in that in trying to develop all of that. We learned a lot. Staff that's still here, including myself, learned a lot from building the library and working with the consultants. So, which is why that not little, but it's a project is out in front in this current budget, is to start to kind of we know we need some time to kind of build and inform the community as we move forward. So that's what that project's for.
Yeah. Do you think that recharacterizing it in some way will give it a little more urgency and move it up in the timeline a bit? We can only replace those heat pumps so many times before they just, like, doesn't work very well. Yeah.
I remember doing that with Jake Allred not that long ago when I was in that room.
Yep.
We were just trying to slide all those things out of there.
Yep.
But I think it has the urgency right now. From what I can see, there's a with Your Parks, Your Future, there's a lot of conversation going on with the community. So I really do believe that it's got some momentum. I think there'll be more from council as they get their reports from the Your Parks, Your Future folks, and then it'll go from there. But it really is at that level. I'm on the side waiting to get, some direction as well, and also to provide that support.
Great. All right. Well, thank you for that clarification. I really appreciate that. I also was really thrilled to see that YVR corridor study taking such a spotlight. I think that was born out of some of our Transportation Commission meetings when I served on that commission, where I was like, why do we keep piecemealing this? We need something. And somebody said, it's called a corridor study. And I was like, yeah, that's what I want. So thank you for, for giving it the proper name and making it actually happen and getting some funding for it, because I think the community really, really needs that. So thanks. All right, that's all I got.
Commissioner Lezak.
Thank you, Carl. The presentation was really very helpful. Filled in a lot of the gaps that the staff report really didn't have for me. But, I agree that clearly for all of our, general plan requirements, we really need to focus on maintaining the infrastructure we have. That's a huge priority. How would you characterize the quality of the roadway pavement in Walnut Creek at this point?
Our pavement is, it sits at a PCI of 72-ish. Really depends on when you measure it and what other maintenance that we've done, whether it's right after we've done our slurry seals and maybe a roadway repaving, or if it's just before. But we hover in that 70 to 73 range, and we have for years. I'll say it's good. It is not excellent and stellar, but it is good, and it's something that we can do with the funding that we have. I think the last time, I'm going off the top of my head, but it's about a $32 million backlog. In other words, if we said, hey, we're going to give you $32 million and you can only spend it on roads, I could basically take care and and bring Walnut Creek roads up to speed with $32 million. But then you have to, then try to stay on top of that with $4, $5, $6 million a year every year, because the network is as large as it is. And then this goes to other assets as well, right? So, but I would say that it's good. They're not great, but they're good.
I guess my perspective is that compared to a number of other cities that I've seen these in business in, we're doing pretty well. And I've seen a lot of pretty poor performance, but somehow I am told that if, my kids are getting 72%, they're C- and they're barely passing, and they're not far from failing. So I can't really say that what you're telling me makes me feel great about a roadway network. From my perspective, is intended over the next 10 years to support a housing element that needs to have thousands of houses and new development coming in the community. But I understand what you're saying, and I saw the numbers that you're proposing. The numbers are only kind of maintenance dollars. They're really not catch-up dollars. And I feel for you. I understand the budget limits. And, my perspective is that we really need to spend more money in that maintenance if we're going to support our general plan as we intended to build out.
Yep.
I did want to support some of the questions that Commissioner Ward had about the Clark Swim Center. I understand that's a tough one, but $42+ million is with an unidentified source of funds is a challenge. And, I don't know, in my business, I'm not really allowed to have, budgets that are unidentified. So what do you think? I mean, I understand you guys think about this a lot. I know you have a commission and a committee that's doing this. Are there ideas of where those funds might come from?
So first, the CIP isn't a budget. So I can have unfunded pieces in there, right? So I want to make sure that's really clear to everyone, is that the CIP isn't the budget. In the first cycle of the CIP, that capital budget component, I've balanced that out so there aren't any holes in it. However, there is some discussion about where that could come from. It's probably pretty obvious where that might go, but I don't know that. So I can't really speak to it. That's really a part of that whole community conversation about, how do we do this? How fast do we move forward? But I did put it into the CIP to kind of start the in a specific cycle to jumpstart the conversation, which is where it sits. And right now we'll see whether it stays there and whether it moves to the right some more. And there are some other projects that have popped up and then dropped back off because of the ability for the funding to be maybe delivered in the time frame where they were hoping to get it, and maybe not. So I think in your packet there's a thing for all-weather sports fields, right? But right now the all-weather sports field at Heather Farm is one of those projects that is shown in the CIP but not in the capital budget because the timing may not be ready for the capital budget right now.
Well, thank you for those answers. I appreciate the challenge that this whole thing is, and appreciate all your work. So thank you.
Commissioner Pickett.
Yeah, just a couple of questions. One of the things I hear a lot about in the development business is the skyrocketing cost of materials and labor and everything. I mean, it's just absurd. Some of the costs have gone up as much as 4 times in the last several years with some components. How do you look at, when you're looking at long-term capital program, how do you look at inflation?
Right. So the stuff in the capital, in the CIP is with an uninflated dollar. It's based on today's dollar. So, but we try to do this update every couple of years so that and those numbers will change. If someone looked back at what we put into the CIP or what we were proposing to put into the CIP for the swim center, for example, they would see that number might have been different and significantly smaller in 16, 18 when we first started talking about this. For the roadway stuff, what ends up happening is the project scopes shrink because the dollars pretty much don't grow that much. So that's also, and same thing with some of the facility projects because the funding is constrained. So the scopes will shrink is typically what happens in those projects.
Okay. Also on the Clark Swim Center, there was a lot of discussion about that. I believe there was some committees or something 3 or 4 years ago, maybe even a little longer ago. And yeah, I think the price range was under $30 million at that point. But there was a lot of discussion about public-private partnerships, getting users, swim teams, aquanauts, those people to contribute to the cost. Does that get considered at all in the CIP?
No, not at this point. Right now, we're just trying to give everyone an idea of what we think, what we've heard, the scope and the cost. Remember, it's actually the number for the swim center specifically has not come from us. Staff did not develop that number. That's been a number that's been given to council through the Your Parks, Your Future process. I just put it into a budget year to put it there. So, and that number will be refined as we go through this planning or this design and planning item that we're going to do in this next in the capital budget in 22-23. We'll probably get some refinement of that number. That number could go up, but it really also depends on, as you mentioned, the cost of materials right now is through the ceiling. It has grown 10% over the past month. It was 10% or more above them from the month prior to that. And it is basically, and depending on where you're buying it from, you were either spending $30 or $50 for a sheet of plywood. Now you might be spending $90 or close to $100 for a sheet of plywood. And if anybody's tried to buy that or a 2x4 or something, you know that those costs are coming up. So, but that may change as the global dynamic happens with spending and purchasing and buying as we come out of COVID. So delaying a project and pushing it out a couple of years may be the thing that actually gets the cost to come back down again and be more reasonable. So there are a lot of variables in making those guesses in the CIP, so that way, that's why we're not budgeting for those. We're just putting out some targets, forecasts, so that when we get into the capital budget, we have a much better number.
Last question. Is it a fair statement to say that the CIP looks at just the costs and the projects that are, that we would like to do and not really consider at this point the revenue sources or the funding sources for those projects?
It's probably a mixed, right? So it's the projects that we would like to do. Some of them have funding. I mean, parks projects have in lieu parkland to spend against. Transportation projects have TIF to spend against for the most part. And there's a whole process for vetting each of those projects with those commissions and with the staff and the community. So those projects have a little bit more ability to do that. But when we get into the big facility projects, that's where there's no dedicated funding source for, and we already discussed roadway. And we have bridges and storm drain and stuff to pay for too.
Yeah. Okay, thanks. That's very helpful to know. Thanks.
Any other commission questions? Okay, seeing none, we will open the public hearing and we will take questions from the public. This is is there any member of the public who wishes to provide comments on this item? If you do, please use the raise hand feature or press *9 if you would like to provide a public comment at this time. I'll ask the secretary to check and see if there is anybody of the public who would like to provide any comments.
Thank you, Chair Kerselik. Checking with my colleague, it does not appear at this time that anyone wishes to comment on this item. No one has raised their hand.
Great, thank you. So we will then close the public hearing and bring it back to the commissioners for any additional questions, comments, or a motion.
I'll move that we find that the 10-year CIP conforms to the Walnut Creek City General Plan 2025.
Second.
Thank you, Commission Secretary. May you call the roll?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Commissioner Pickett?
Yes.
Commissioner Reiser?
Yes.
Commissioner Ward?
Yes.
Commissioner Lezak?
Yes.
Commissioner Strongman?
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson?
Yes.
And Chair Kerselik?
Yes.
The ayes have it 7-0. The recommendation is approved.
Thank you, Commission. Really appreciate it. And it's been wonderful to watch Commissioner Anderson's sunset happen through this meeting. He's gone from that bright blue to the dark, and the colors have been amazing to watch. And thanks to all of you. It's good to see you again. Now that I've moved over to the dark side of the CIP, I miss the Planning Commission a little bit. So take care. Thank you.
Thank you, Carlton. And if you happen to find a bag of gold, let us know.
Right.
All right, we will move on to our second public hearing for the evening. The next item is the Shake Shack remodel and takeout window conditional use permits. And I believe Haley has the honor this evening.
Yes, thank you. All right, good evening, commissioners. My name is Haley Crawford, associate planner here with the city. Tonight, I will be presenting a request for a conditional use permit for Shake Shack proposed at 1604 Mount Diablo Boulevard. Just to orient us, the site is the former Destination Maternity Building. It's at the corner of Mount Diablo Boulevard and Locust Street. The site is actually, well, I have some photos at the bottom just to kind of orient on the existing conditions. And then here's a site plan of the existing conditions. The site is 8,600 square feet, and it's an existing 2-story building, about 5,700 square feet, that's going to be remodeled and slightly modified to accommodate the new restaurant tenant Shake Shack. As part of their total project scope and entitlements, the project is requiring design review approval from the Design Review Commission for the exterior building remodel and facade modifications, a new outdoor patio along both street frontages, new color and material palette, and new signage. And then, as I mentioned, we're here tonight because the project also requires a conditional use permit from the Planning Commission for the exterior takeout window proposed on the south facade. The restaurant use itself is a use allowed by right in the pedestrian retail district. It's just the exterior or the takeout portion of the restaurant that requires a conditional use permit. The project did go to the Design Review Commission back in March for a study session. They were overall, generally supportive of the use and the takeout window, and just had some comments on, the building design and some architectural comments. And so we're here tonight, the Planning Commission, for the conditional use permit request. And then the project will go back to the Design Review Commission for final design review approval and to address some of those facade comments. The project also qualifies for a CEQA exemption under both existing facilities 15301 and infill development 15332. It meets all the conditions of both of these exemptions. And so proposed site plan. The Shake Shack is proposing just to remodel the building. There is a slight decrease in floor area, both due to accommodate the new trash enclosure at the northwest corner of the building. See if I can get my cursor to work, if not. So a slight decrease in floor area there, as well as a decrease in the second floor area. They're kind of shifting the second floor around and decreasing the actual overall square footage. And so overall, it's a decrease of about 600 square feet total. And so the proposed takeout window is located along Mount Diablo Boulevard, just one bay west from the primary entrance, which is also off Mount Diablo Boulevard. You can see here, as I mentioned, there is that outdoor dining patio that wraps the corner. And so it'll front both Mount Diablo Boulevard and Locust Street. There's a rendering coming up in a minute that'll show that a little better. And so here's the proposed facade with that exterior takeout window. And so the way that the kind of general takeout function will occur is that any visitor or patron of Shake Shack will have access through an app to order their meal. They cannot actually order directly at this window. They must order through an app. And then that board, that screen just to the right of the window will show names of orders when they are ready. And part of this is to eliminate the need for queuing because no one will be waiting in line to order. And there will be no waiting around for your order to be ready as well. You will get your notification and you could see your name on the board. And there will also be just a blade sign identifying the Shack Track pickup window to identify for pedestrian activity along Mount Diablo Boulevard. And so in considering the takeout window and the takeout portion of this restaurant, the Planning Commission is required to make an additional finding beyond the standard findings of a conditional use permit, that being that the facility will not rely on customers making a one-stop trip by automobile. The code also outlines several considerations that the Planning Commission might take in making this finding. So I'll kind of summarize and outline staff's analysis and why staff is supportive of the pickup window at this location. The first one being that there's actually no driveway entry off a major arterial. There's a one-way, the existing condition is a one-way in access off Locust Street, and that then rounds the corner of the building, and then an exit only off Mount Diablo Boulevard. There's also a curbed center median in Mount Diablo Boulevard that would further prevent traffic from wanting to turn in, but that is an exit only. Shake Shack specifically chose this location with its downtown context to capitalize on the existing pedestrian activity within downtown. And the existing site has a paved parking lot with 17 stalls that's shared amongst the 2 other adjacent properties. And so by virtue of that, and that's an existing condition that will remain with this project. And so that does not discourage pedestrian traffic, or it does not encourage automobile traffic. And finally, Shake Shack has stated that the takeout service of their function of the restaurant will generate about 10 to 15% of transactions. So it will not be the predominant mode of transactions for the business. And so given all of that, tonight staff is recommending that the Planning Commission adopt the draft resolution to approve the conditional use permit for the exterior takeout window for Shake Shack at 1604 Mount Diablo Boulevard. I'm here if you have any questions. The applicant also has a presentation tonight, and I believe we'll be going into a little bit more in depth on Shake Shack's takeout process and that app system, if you have questions on that. But thank you, and I'm here for questions.
Thank you, Haley. Are there any questions from commissioners for Haley on the CUP application? Commissioner Anderson.
Thank you. A couple of questions related to the specific plan objectives. The first one was on I think it's LU4. It refers to wanting it to become an international dining destination. And I'm just wondering exactly what that means. Does that describe the cuisine at different dining situations, or is it that you expect people to come from overseas to enjoy the dining here? I'm not quite sure what that phrase means.
Maybe both, but I think what that really speaks to is just to encourage a wide range of types of dining experiences. So, okay. You know, different types of food, different types of options, things like that.
Okay, very good. The other one is the LU9, the question of Masonic temple preservation or restoration. I guess if I read it correctly, essentially the situation is that there may once have been the potential for a significant historic resource there, but given an earlier facade replacement, that's pretty much gone. Is that a fair reading?
That's correct.
Okay.
There was a historic assessment done and attached to your packet tonight that explains that in more detail, but it's not determined to be a historic resource.
Okay. You might want to make I think it's a correction in the staff report. It says, this is on page 3 regarding the historic resources. Therefore, the building does appear to be a significant resource. And I think that should be does not appear. I just want to correct that.
Thank you.
And that's all I had.
Any other questions from commissioners? Commissioner Reiser.
Just a quick question. I have other questions for the applicant, but because that's on such a well-traveled street of Mount Diablo Boulevard there, is there going to be any, and I didn't see it in any of the renderings, but is there going to be any kind of planter border on the Mount Diablo Boulevard side of the sidewalk? I know it's a very wide sidewalk. I think it's a great use for it. It's going to show traffic and things like that. But because of the exposure to traffic, one would be concerned. And since they don't have to queue up in a straight line out the window waiting for orders and things like that, and they're waiting around to look at a message board, is there any kind of planter border or any kind of natural barrier between traffic and that sidewalk?
There is a existing planter out at the curb area that's going to remain. And then Shake Shack, in addition, as part of their design review package, is proposing some freestanding planters up against their building and kind of incorporated into the patio area as well.
But not between the traffic and the building, not on the sidewalk, on the street side of the sidewalk.
There is an existing one that's adjacent or closer to the corner, so okay. East of the driveway, and that will remain.
Got it.
Any other questions from commissioners? Haley, I just have one question. In the applicant's narrative on the PR district requirements, they mentioned a Fairham Pierce traffic study that was prepared for the project. Was one prepared, and could you give us just a brief overview of what it says?
Yeah, so one of the city's internal requirements or triggers for a additional traffic analysis has to do with trip generations and looking at using trip generation rates. And so it was an internal kind of memo that they prepared to satisfy this internal requirement. And essentially what it said was that based on the way that we look at uses in the pedestrian retail district, we use the same trip generation rate for all uses in the downtown. And so because this is a change of use with actual decrease in floor area, it did not trigger the need for additional traffic analysis. And so the memo just essentially summarized that.
Great, thank you. Any other last minute questions from commissioners? Seeing none, we will open the public hearing and we will give the applicant 15 minutes for a presentation.
I guess that's me.
And Craig, I
yes.
believe that will be you.
Thank you very much. Good evening, commissioners. My name is Craig Lazareski. I'm one of the principals of Greater Bay Development, along with my two sons and nephew. Sons Mark and Ben Lazareski and nephew Jed Peters, who have all assisted me in this project. We've been working and investing in Walnut Creek for about 60 years. We're a family-owned company. This is the third generation that's getting involved in real estate renovation and development now. And I'd like to give you just a brief history of this building, and then turn it over to Mark DiMolanta, our project architect, to make his presentation. It shouldn't be very long at all. The property was acquired in the early 1980s and immediately went through a renovation process. We had several over the course of the last 40 years. You can imagine about 5 different tenants, 10-year durations of each. This will be the second renovation of this building and the most significant. It follows on a 2019 renovation of the Dole House, which is immediately to the west of this project. And when this renovation is completed, along with the Dole House, will pretty much meet the Locust Street, Mount Diablo specific plan goal of encouraging the renovation, rehabilitation of significant structures. And we, as a company, believe that these are very significant. We're very proud to own these landmarks and keep them up to where they went. Previously, one of the comments I think Commissioner Anderson made was regarding the historic nature of the temple. Well, it was basically, you may recall, a bunker with no windows at all. It wasn't very attractive, and in those days, it was on the outskirts of the city, kind of the outskirts of almost the traditional downtown. And so our first development was really a renovation to bring it up to kind of an attractive addition to the downtown. One final note, we're very thankful for staff's input and working with us through this. Haley's done a great job. The entire community development staff, community development team has been very helpful in helping us push this along. I'm very pleased that this project is kind of like the beginning of maybe a renovation or a kickoff of rehabilitation in the core coming out of this terrible last year that we've had. And so enthusiastic about that. I'm very pleased that a major company has chosen this site and Walnut Creek as a destination for their operation. That's going to be, I think, a real boom to the businesses along the street. And finally, I want to just emphasize that the CUP is basically on all fours with the goal of having a walking, pedestrian area, a pedestrian-friendly area. And it really is truly enforces the park once and walk goal of the general plan. And by the way, this is is not it's not a takeout window, it's a pickup window only. It's not a takeout window. So I want to emphasize that. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to our project architect, Mark DiMolanta, when we're available for questions, of course.
Good evening, commissioners and planning staff. My name is Mark DiMolanta. I'm a licensed architect here with the state of California and based in San Francisco. I'm very happy that our project team is presenting this project for you and the commission tonight. I have to say, Haley took a lot of my bullet points, so a lot of this might be a little bit redundant, but I'll go through them fairly quickly. She did such a great job that there's not too much more to add, but I will add more to what she said. The project is located in the downtown core area. The proposed fast casual restaurant Shake Shack will be a complimentary amenity for the downtown workers. The existing site is a former retail building and is on the intersection of two main thoroughfares, Mount Diablo Boulevard and Locust Street. The site's main driveway entry is located on Locust Street, and Locust Street does not have direct access to a major arterial street. The existing driveway exit is located on Mount Diablo Boulevard, and Mount Diablo Boulevard has a center fixed curb median preventing oncoming traffic from turning into the exit driveway. So pedestrians will find themselves conveniently surrounded by neighborhood serving businesses and retail shops. And they will likely use one of the many existing off-street parking and metered parking stalls. The existing surface parking will remain with no changes to the overall quantity of the parking spaces. We are proposing to locate the main entry so that the front is more centralized with customer circulation at the first floor. There is an existing convenience store for entering on and exiting on Locust Street. The restaurant Shake Shack will occupy both the first and second floors. The proposed restaurant hours are Monday through Sunday, 11 a.m. to 10 p.m. And as you can see that there's multiple locations for dining inside and on both the first and second floor with outdoor seating. The second floor was reduced a little bit, as Haley mentioned, really to give a sense of connection to the lower level and to make the building feel like a whole. The outdoor seating has freestanding tables and chairs and will be removed when the restaurant closes. The pickup window, which we also call the Shack Track, anticipates 10 to 15% of total transactions and will also have the same operating hours as the restaurant from 11 a.m. to 10 p.m. Shake Shack will provide a trash container adjacent to the pickup window on the Mount Diablo Boulevard, and there are existing city sidewalk trash and recycle bins on Locust Street. I also want to point out this plan kind of shows the planter that was asked along the Mount Diablo side. Basically, the Shack Track pickup window is used when customers order through the app or website or call-in orders or phone ahead orders. Guests will receive a confirmation on the app, and the app will tell them when the order will be ready, the approximate time. When the order is ready, the guest will receive a text, and the guest will be able to approach the window and pick up their order. If it's not ready, there will be, as you can see on the lower right-hand side, there the orders that are ready, and they'll be notified when it is ready. In short, simply put, the pickup window has a small countertop to receive meals and drinks and sliding glass panel. There is a air curtain to provide some air infiltration, and a notification board is on the right-hand side of it. The pickup window is identified by a proposed double-sided blade sign, and the signage and the pickup window have been designed and tailored for pedestrians for the fast casual dining. in short, that's our presentation, and we're open to receiving questions.
Great. Thank you very much. Are there any questions from commissioners for the applicant? Okay, Commissioner Pickett.
Just a couple. How exactly is the parking managed? It's shared among, I think, 3 property owners or 17 places. Is there any kind of control system, or is it just first come, first served? And who parks there? Employees or the customers ever park there?
I believe.
I can answer that, Commissioner Pickett. Each of the 3 properties is our company owns the Dole House, which is Warby Parker, has about, I can't think of it, it's 4 or 5 stalls. We also own and control the Shake Shack building, and we are the managing general partner of the building adjacent to that, which was formerly the coffee shop, and it's going to be Rooted, coffee shop called Rooted. It's in permitting right now. Each of those spaces will be metered and controlled by the tenant and our management company.
Thank you. And just a clarification on the planters. There's an existing planter space between the curb and the sidewalk along Mount Diablo Boulevard. And there was discussion, and I see 1 planter box on the plans, just to the right. Looks like it's to the right of the, we call it a pickup window. I'm using the right language for that. I don't want to cause any problems,
yes.
But
yes.
I would call it the drive-up window for sure.
Please.
Anyhow, are you going to replant the planter out there? And is that the only raised planter you're going to add?
It is the only raised planter. We definitely intend to keep it lively and vibrant.
Can I add to that? That has traditionally been, there's always been a planter between the street and the sidewalk area in front of the current building.
Right.
And I believe that if you look, that it's pretty dense in terms of foliage and plants. We've always kept it up, and we fully intend, landscaping is a big part of our management operation, and we always intend to do that, and we intend to do that with this property as well.
Yeah, I think the photos show that fairly well. I just didn't know if you had plans to redo it.
We're going to keep it up, yeah.
Just to keep up what's there.
And improve it. We want to improve it overall and make it look very nice,
Okay, great. Those are the only questions. I think it's a great location for this kind of facility. As you said, it normally I'd panic over the parking, but I think that the location, it's one of those, we don't want to encourage people to drive there. We want them to park once and walk, and that's what you said.
Right.
And so those are my only questions. Thank you.
Any other questions from commissioners? Commissioner Reiser.
Just a quick question of curiosity. I'm completely in favor of the application and the window and everything. Just to understand the business operation. So Shake Shack, as I understand it, I've been to just one, and if I recall correctly, I walked up to a counter, I ordered it, I waited, and then picked it up and sat at a table inside. I think it was in Larkspur is where I went. That's the case here. So for pickup, to go rather, if someone still wants to go and they walk in, they can still order to go at the counter. It's just that people using the app can order it on their app, or if they call in, that's where they pick it up, is in this pickup window on Mount Diablo Boulevard. Otherwise, you can always go in and take something to go.
Yes, correct. Absolutely.
And then in the description of the business model, and 10 to 15% of it historically traditionally with the company, that's kind of what they're saying is what happens is 10 to 15% of the orders come that way. So I think I understand. I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, good.
Any other commission questions? I have just a couple. Does your Shake Shack in Oakland on Telegraph or any of your other Shake Shacks have pickup windows on the outside similar to this?
You know, I have to tell you, I'm independent from the Shake Shack company itself. I'm the architect for the Lazareschi family. I couldn't speak to the other locations, to be honest with you. I wouldn't know it well enough to say.
And Commissioner Krasilik, I'm independent of Shake Shack as well. I do not know. I do know that this is a relatively new feature in the Shake Shack operation, and I think this is a kind of a coming thing that was kind of developed during the last year during the pandemic, and their new locations all have this feature.
Okay, and how would you discourage patrons from driving into the driveway area, stopping there, and then having somebody run out and stand on the sidewalk to get their order? Is there a way to try to discourage that should it become a problem?
To discourage it per se, I really believe that the intention is, if you can imagine people who are, let's say, working in the area, you would not want to really waste too much time in line. So the idea is what people do is they order it in advance and then come downstairs, it's ready, and you go. Very, very popular in for business lunches and whatnot. And to answer your question, to discourage it, I think like what Craig was saying is that it's fairly new to the I guess to the business model. I wouldn't know how to speak to that right now.
Are you concerned about somebody stacking up in the driveway aisle, Commissioner?
That's basically the question. I believe there wouldn't be any signage that says Shake Shack parking this way on Locust. So it's really, you're just trying to capture pedestrians who are just walking up to pick up their.
Oh, absolutely. And that's why Shake Shack is interested in those properties, because of the pedestrian orientation and and surprisingly, the lack of parking.
Okay, thank you. Those are my only questions. At this point, then, we will open it up to the public to see if there are any questions. Do any members of the public wish to provide public comments at this time? If you do, please use the raised hand feature or *9 if you'd like to provide a comment. And Commissioner or Commission Secretary, do you see anybody raising a hand or calling in?
I do not believe anyone has raised their hand. We also have not received any written correspondence this evening on this item. And so I think it's safe to say there are no public comments for the Shake Shack item.
Thank you. Since there aren't any public comments, we can probably skip any additional comments from the applicant, and we can close the public hearing. And I'll bring it back to the commissioners for any last minute questions, any comments, or a motion. Commissioner Ward.
I just wanted to thank the staff, particularly for the historical portion of the staff report, because I thought it was especially fascinating to learn a little bit more about the early days of Walnut Creek. So just a little thank you for that.
Commissioner Lezak.
I want to note that I spent a little bit of time watching the design review discussions related to this, and I appreciate the applicant's efforts there. I think the design review component of this is much more significant than the planning component. And, I'm very in favor of this, in part because of the conversation and the work that the Design Review Commission has done. So I commend the applicant, but I also, praise the Design Review Commission for all their work. They actually seem to do a tremendous amount, even compared to the Planning Commission. With that, I don't know if anybody else in these other things, I'm going to go ahead and suggest that we motion to approve the Shake Shack remodel and takeout window conditional use permit and design review application Y 20-084.
Second.
Commission Secretary, you're on.
Thank
My
you.
bad.
Pardon.
Thank you.
Having trouble with my mute button. Anyway, Vice Chair Lezak.
I'm just a commissioner these days.
I'm sorry. I apologize. You are the commissioner, former chair, former vice
Yes,
chair.
so,
Commissioner
yes.
Lezak. Thank you.
Yes.
Commissioner Pickett,
Yes.
Commissioner Ward, Commissioner Anderson,
Yes.
Commissioner Strongman,
Yes.
Vice Chair Riser,
Yes.
and Chair Kerselik.
I will say I've seen plenty of Masonic temples. Most of them are bunkers with hardly any windows. You would never know that this was an old Masonic temple. And I will vote yes.
There it is.
That said, the ayes have it 7-0. The motion carries. The use permit is approved.
Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good to see you.
Okay, that's the end of our public hearings for this evening. We will move on to commission considerations. Commission Secretary, are there any other additional considerations this evening?
There are no other considerations, no?
Are there any commission member staff reports or announcements? Commissioner Lezak.
I'd like to mention publicly how much I have appreciated my time with Ethan Bindernagel as the planning manager and the economic development manager. And I understand that he is going to be moving on to some other things in his life and not going to be here with us probably for our future meetings, though I'm sure he'll be sitting somewhere nearby watching and laughing. So anyway, I just want to put it out there to Ethan, to the public, to all the commissioners, just how much I really respect and appreciated our time with our planning manager, and thank you very much, Ethan.
Hear, hear. I second that.
I'd like to thank Ethan for entertaining me twice a month.
I'm just glad that the newer commissioners have actually got a chance to meet him in person briefly before it all shut
Next round
down.
of commissioners, Ethan will be a legend.
Yeah, we really appreciate all your hard work, your incredible depth of knowledge, and your unflappable good humor during our meetings. And it's just been great, and we're going to miss you a lot. And thank you for everything you've done. So.
Yes, thank you, Ethan. It's been 8 years for me on planning, and I don't know how long on transportation, working with you off and on. And I know there's a couple of city manager positions open locally, and some others in some pretty nice areas around the country. So I'm sure you'll land on your feet somewhere doing great things. So good luck in your endeavors, whatever they may be. And with that, I think we will adjourn the meeting for this evening. Thank you all.
Good night, everybody.
Night, everyone.
Thanks all. Appreciate it.